Well, hello again everybody. Well, it's actually been quite a long time since I've seen any of you, so I'm sorry about that. I've been very busy with work and I've been working away, and the stars just haven't aligned that have allowed me to do videos. But given that I have been away, you get a little bit bored when you're working away, so I used some of that time to do other things, and one of those things what I did was purchase an awful lot of bits and pieces off Amazon. Probably went a little bit mad actually. So what I thought we could do today is we can have a look through some of my Amazon purchases. There is a little bit of a theme to some of these things, and well, you can let me know what you think. Well, no doubt some of you have been watching my previous videos where I've been building this homebrew ESD gun, and I got to the point really where we needed to build some circuitry for it, and I think I said in the last video that it's at one point, well, many years ago, it's probably longer than I'd care to remember, about 20 years ago, it was actually common for people to make their own printed circuit boards. We all used to have a tank of ferric chloride bubbling away somewhere, and I can remember spending lots of happy Saturdays and Sundays etching circuit boards and well, basically dyeing my kitchen brown. If any of you remember making circuit boards, I used to use this ferric chloride etching, and whatever ferrite chloride touches, well, it touches and it stays there. So I remember my mother complaining bitterly that half the kitchen work surfaces and all her good towels, in fact, you know, everything, the cat, the dog, the work surfaces, the table, the towels, everything would be covered in this brown ferric chloride when I'd been etching some circuit boards. So here's the first of my purchases, which is, it's not particularly exciting. This is just a piece of copper clad, and this is FR4 material. FR4, it's not actually the material, it's actually the fire rating, but FR4, so typically this will be a fiberglass material, which is what it looks like. So the two types of circuit board material, one of them was the like compressed paper and phenolic resin. That was very popular back in the day, like a Bakelite material, and it's quite a dark brown colour. Tend not to see that anymore, apart from on the very, very cheapest of cheap circuit boards from China. So most people use this circuit board. This is FR4. As you can see, this is a single-sided board. It's a laminate, so we've got a sheet of copper and we've got a sheet of fiberglass on the back, and those two pieces of material, they're just glued together under extreme pressure and heat, and it leaves you with this copper fiberglass laminate. So what we're going to do is we're going to one way or another, we're going to print a circuit onto this copper clad board, and then we're going to dye the kitchen brown using ferric chloride. We're going to eat away the unwanted copper, and hopefully that's going to leave us with our circuit. So there's a piece of copper clad board. You can actually see that unfortunately it's pretty dirty. It's got lots of fingerprints on it already, which aren't even mine, so very important before we use this, got to give it a good clean, so we'll do that later. So I've got what looks like yellow paper here. So what this is for, this is toner transfer paper, and it allows us to use a laser printer. So what we'll actually do is, it's kind of like greaseproof paper this. It has a shiny side which is like greasy, and it has a matte side. So one way that we can make printed circuit boards, we can actually print using a laser printer. We print onto the glossy side, and then a bit like using those old stick-on transfers that you used to maybe play with as a kid, you can actually then transfer the toner from here onto the circuit board, and wherever the toner transfers onto the copper material, that will actually prevent the etchant. It'll prevent our ferric chloride from etching the board away. So we use this this type of paper for what they call a direct toner transfer. So that's one of the materials that we can use, so I bought some of that. Well, as you can probably see, I've gone ahead and I've got my old HP laser printer out of storage, and this thing really should be drawing its old age pension, because it's absolutely years old, this thing, and it's actually still on its original cartridge of toner, although I think for the last 10 years it's had this toner light flashing, so I think it is actually running out of toner, and I've actually ordered another cheap cartridge off Amazon, so we have got another cartridge for it, but it's not an original cartridge. So what I think I want to do first is I want to try to use some of this glossy, shiny release paper. I'm not actually sure which way this printer prints, so that's the first thing you've got to find out. So I think the easiest way to figure out how your printer prints is I just draw a little picture of it, of the of what is actually the paper feed tray, and I write front and back on it, and I'm also just going to write, you don't really need to, this side up, this side up, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a sheet of paper in here to start with, because I want to figure out which way up we need to put the release paper. I'm sure it'll do. Put that in there. And now, just to use my piece of software, I use Proteus to do my PCBs, and maybe you can see on my screen here we've got a layout which I've done for our ESD gun. So what I'm going to do is just going to print that off now. Okay, so you can see that we've printed our circuit board onto our sheet of paper, and if we just have a look now, I can actually work out that I put the paper into the paper tray, front, back, this side up, so it went in like that, and the actual print comes out on the reverse side. So what that's really telling me is which way up I actually need to put our paper. This is like a greaseproof paper, and what you'll find is it's actually shiny on one side. Maybe you can see it reflecting. It's shiny on one side and it's matte on the other. So according to that, oh, you can hear my cat whinging. What I think we'll do is, I think we'll actually, so we don't use quite so much paper, I think we'll cut this down a little bit so I don't waste any. Now, as I said, I'm not sure if this is going to work because this printer is running out of toner, and the idea is we're actually going to print the toner onto the shiny side of the paper, and it isn't going to stick very well. In theory, the toner won't stick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use heat. We're going to effectively iron the image on from here. We're going to iron it onto our PCB material, and in theory, it won't etch away. And you can see now we've actually got our board printed onto the shiny side of our paper. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get this paper, we're going to stick it to our piece of copper clad board after giving it a clean. We're going to stick it to that, and I'm going to effectively try to iron it on. Well, I'm not going to use an iron, I'm actually going to use a laminator. So let's see if we can get this to work. I need to cut out my piece of copper board first. There we go, 2 pieces of cut circuit board. So one will be a test and the other one will be the final thing. Important to remove any sharp edges from this because we're going to put this circuit board through a laminator, and if there's any sharp edges they'll actually put dents in the wheels of the laminator, so we don't want that. So while my wife wasn't looking, I went in the kitchen cupboard and tipped out the breakfast cereal all over the kitchen worktop because I thought this would make quite a good container for etching things in, and it is resealable because obviously we don't want to spill ferric chloride everywhere, so that can go in there. Also, while I was in the garage I got some of this green Scotch-Brite pad, which is actually quite rough and aggressive, but I think we probably want something like that because when we want to transfer our toner onto here, we want to give our toner something to key into, so I think it's probably better if you clean the board and roughen it up. Now I'm putting some gloves on because if you're like me, you spend most of your time covered in grease and oils and stuff like that, and once we've cleaned off this circuit board I don't want to cover my jammy fingers all over it and put grease marks on it because they may not etch properly, so I'm going to give that a clean with this Scotch-Brite pad in very random directions. Okay, so hopefully that should be clean enough now. I suppose you could use alcohol. I'm using acetone here because acetone just eats through everything, doesn't it? Although it is a very smelly chemical and more volatile, and I'm in quite a warm room at the moment, so the acetone vapour that this is giving off really isn't very pleasant. Well, I think I'll don another pair of gloves. I suppose I should be using these quite sparingly, what with all this outbreak of coronavirus and yeah, the whole world running out of bog rolls, etc. Now, it may have actually been a better idea. I think I might have cut these copper clad boards perhaps just a little bit too small. It might have been a better idea to make them a bit oversized and then trim them down afterwards. Okay, so I've got the toner transfer paper, and the idea is what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually transfer the toner, the ink, off here onto the piece of circuit board that we've cleaned. So to do that we're going to use heat. Last time I made a printed circuit boards, I think I used those little rub-on, I don't really call them, little rub-on stencils that you used to, they used to come with all the shapes of the tracks and the capacitors and the resistor on, and you used to, like grease-proof paper, you put them on top of your circuit board and you would, you know, rub them with the back of a pencil or something like that, and the transfers would come off and stick to the copper board. And the other thing that I used to use, I just used to draw the circuit tracks in. I used to draw the tracks in just using a Lumicolour pen. Well, certainly that's what we used to do back in the day. Looks like the gloves are going to have to come off because I've got a capped on tape failure here. I think once this has been passed through the laminator once, the board and the two parts, the board and the transfer material will get fused together. So that's the plan anyway. Right, so here's another of my purchases, which is a laminator. So actually amazing really, I only paid £15 for this, came from Amazon. I've actually bought laminators in the past for the office and that and paid quite a lot more money for them, but this feels quite solid, feels quite good for the price. It's got 80 mic or 125. What does mic stand for? Is it microns? Is that paper thickness? Is it temperature? I don't know. We'll put it on the 125 setting, whatever that is. And I assume we just have to plug this in and wait for it to heat up. So I will do that. Oh, it says it's come on. I can hear some wheels turning. Okay, so we have our little green light that's come on now. So in theory, it's ready for the laminating action to take place. So I'm going to try and present this to the laminator. Come on, get in. Now in theory I think the Kapton tape is a high temperature tape, so I think that should be okay. I don't think it'll bother it. Well, I actually see the ready light has gone off, so does that mean it's cooled down? I'm guessing it does. Well, I've seen some people passing it through a laminator as much as 10 times, and again, I'm not sure how many times is necessary, but I guess I am just going to keep passing it through because, you know, why not? Right, okay, in theory, that should have laminated. I guess we'll just leave this to cool down. It's actually really hot, this, as you would expect. Is probably a surprising amount of thermal mass in a copper PCB board. Now, just to speed things up, I think I'll go and put some water on it. I don't think the water particularly helps it release because it is like a grease-proof paper, but let's put some water on it, get it all soggy, and maybe it'll cool it down and just help the paper come off. So I'm going to go and do that now. Well, as you can see, all the toner has come off the transfer paper and it's on the circuit board now, which is what we wanted. But I can actually see it's not totally black. There's some areas where I can kind of still see through. So I don't know if that's a problem with the fact that my laser printer is actually running out of toner, because it just looks as though, I don't know, it looks as though there is areas where there isn't enough toner. I can also see, looks like there's a little bit of a mistake here in the tracks. Just a little bit of damage on that one, as though something has dragged through. I don't quite know what's happened there, but I don't know if you can see that. There's kind of like a little row of dots there. I'd probably be tempted, back in the day I would have just touched that up with an indelible marker pen, where you see these little failed areas. In fact, that's probably what I'll do now. We'll just get a little marker pen and I'll just touch up where I think the tracks might be damaged. So I think we will go ahead and etch this, but I don't know if it's going to leave us with copper. I don't know how much toner we've transferred across, I'm just not sure. Well, it's just a few moments later and I've got to admit I'm feeling a little bit less smug about this now, because looking at it I can definitely see some of the copper showing through. It seems to be quite black around the edges, but the middle bit here doesn't really appear to have taken as much of the toner as I would have liked, and I think if I try to etch it, it's probably just going to get through to the copper and etch the part of the tracks away that we actually want to keep. So I actually think that this is a really good method. I think the problem is my old laser printer just needs a new printer cartridge. Let's give that a go for direct toner transfer. Well, as I'm hoping you can see, I've actually gone ahead and I've transferred the toner from our release paper onto the copper circuit board, and it's actually come out, I think, pretty well. It's looking very black. So it looks like the only problem that we really had with my old laser printer was it just needed a new cartridge, and now I've put that in, it does look as though it's actually managed to transfer. I'm hoping enough toner so that the etch won't eat through it. I can see just a couple of small imperfections here and there, a couple of little pin pricks. I think there's one there and another little tiny one there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a go at touching that up with a Lumicolour pen, and then hopefully we can go ahead and we can drop this in some ferric chloride and see if it etches. So I think we are pretty much ready to go ahead and have a go at etching our circuit board, and to do that I'm going to be using our old favourite of ferric chloride, which I mentioned earlier. Now I bought this ferric chloride off Amazon. It really is, the thing about Amazon, it's just far too convenient, isn't it, to order things, and I can't remember how much this cost. I think it might have been about £10 or £15. It wasn't ridiculously expensive, and although you can of course just buy the crystals, this was just pre-mixed, and it was you know, just more convenient. So it does say it's ready to use. It says that ideally we should heat it to looks like 42 degrees. I don't think I'll heat it that much for sure, because I'm a little bit concerned about it lifting off the toner we've put on our printed circuit board, because if it lifts the toner it's just going to etch all the copper away, isn't it? So that's what we're going to etch our board with. So when you're etching something, it does actually help to have a little bit of agitation within the ferric chloride, just to kind of well, I think the agitation just helps to sweep away the ferric chloride off the surface of the PCB board, and it just means that it keeps being refreshed rather than having some ferric chloride which is in close contact with the board all the time, and as you know, it's just sucked up its quantity of copper. So what you want to do is you want to keep the etching fluid, you want to keep it circulating and just agitate it slightly. So what I bought to do that is this very cheap aquarium pump. Again, I think this was about the cheapest aquarium pump that I could find on Amazon. It was about £5, and I've also gone ahead and bought some tubing. Now I'm hoping that that tubing is going to fit on there. So I'm going to stick one end of the tubing into our aquarium pump, and can anyone guess where I've got the other end of the tubing stuck? So our aquarium pump comes with what I would call a shaving plug on it. I don't know if that's a shaving plug. Luckily I've got one of these horrible depth adapters. Will it fit? Yeah, it kind of fits badly. Let's try plugging that in. Oh, this is oh, that's vibrating in quite a pleasurable fashion actually. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's quite bubblicious, that, isn't it? That's producing some agitation, which is really just what we want. Well, after all that tedious preparation work, we're actually finally at the interesting bit, which is where we get to do the etching. And well, as I always say, much like a night out with a Barnsley girl, we're going to be double gloving. Now, ferric chloride that we're going to be using, I've got to admit, it isn't actually, well, in my opinion, it's not that bad. It doesn't burn your hand off if you get it on you, but what it does do, it leaves really horrible brown stains on everything it touches, and once you get it on your skin, it's not coming off. So I've got this old food container that I'm going to use to do our etching in. And now I'm just going to glug some in. And it looks like we're only just going to have enough. Can I actually lay that down a little bit more? Can I get it in a bit deeper? It's only just oh, okay. I was going to say it fits like a glove, and it should start etching right away. I can see it's actually already gone brown, some of them traces. So, well, now it's just the waiting game. So let's switch on the air. guess I should just put something over it because it is quite bubbling quite violently. Just put something over it to catch some of the spray and leave it to it. Well, you know what? It's been in probably less than 3 minutes, and I think it might actually be done. Well, I don't know about you, but I've yet to breathe in some fiberglass dust today, so here's my chance. So when it comes to drilling holes in PCBs, I've obviously purposely just not drilled some because you're going to forget some anyway, so you may as well just not bother and just rely on the fact you're going to have to come back and re-drill some of it. If you can use this toner transfer method as I've just used, well, it works flawlessly. It's absolutely perfect. I'm sure I could have actually gone down in much finer detail. I think I have made some mistakes on this circuit board, and I think the mistakes I've made is obviously I'm used to doing boards with solder resist and stuff like that, so you know we have quite small pads here, and particularly some of the pads, I've got a pads down here for a transistor, and I've got to admit I drilled them, and pretty much just drilling the holes has almost gone all the way through the pads. Some of my footprints for the components that I've chosen, what I should have done is, knowing that I was hand building it, I should have made the pads, some of these pads like literally twice the size. They're much too small to hand build, especially if you haven't got the solder resist on. Now of course there is methods to put solder resist on the board, you can do that at home as well, but I did explore some of them and it just looks like a complete and utter pain to do. So I'm quite keen on this toner transfer method. If you've got a laser printer and it prints really quite black, I mean this is only my really my first attempt. The first attempt didn't work because the printer cartridge was no good, but the second attempt has worked flawlessly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give this a good clean, and then on the other side of the board I'm just going to try to apply some of the ident layer using this toner transfer method. Again, I've printed out the ident layer in reverse and I'm going to try and laminate that onto our board as well. But I think I need to clean it off first and you know, clean it with acetone, because if I start putting acetone on the board after I've put this this other layer on, the ident layer, the acetone will wash it off again. So what we'll do is we'll give the board a good clean. I still think it's quite dirty from the toner. I can see like bits of black which are in the copper, so I'm just going to give it a good scrub with this abrasive sponge material and give it a wipe with acetone, and then and Bob's your uncle. So let me do that. It is a shame that I made some of these pads so small, because this is the first time I've done this in 30 years, so you know, it's not surprising we have the odd hiccup. And the next time that I make a circuit board, I'm obviously going to know that I need to increase some of these pad sizes. I've actually made a note to myself in my CAD file on the computer to say, you know, some of these pads are a little bit too small. The other thing that I'm a little bit disappointed about is this board has got it's got 2 links on it, and well, I don't know where they are, but there's a couple of places where I just couldn't quite route the tracks, so I had to put some links in, and I always class that as being, you know, a little bit of a fail if you have to put links in. You know, you don't really want to do it, but sometimes it's unavoidable. But actually, just to prove a point, I actually did go ahead and, you know, 12 o'clock last night, I was still hammering away at the CAD file, and I did manage to lay it out without any links at all. But having made this board, I couldn't be bothered to go through the re-etching process, to be quite honest. But that is another problem with making your own circuit boards. You'll all have done this. Anybody who's laid a board out, it's never finished. You sit there looking at it, and you look at it and you think, oh well, if I just move that component a few millimeters to the left or a few millimeters to the right, or I'll just realign the component ident layer, and you know, you can be doing that for days. This board actually took me about, it only took me about 2 hours to lay it out, but then I spent another 5 hours just shuffling things around because it wasn't quite as aesthetically pleasing as I wanted. So I was also watching some other videos on YouTube the other night, and I noticed that some people put like a lacquer on the board. I think they call it spray-on flux, and I think I'm not sure if it is really a flux or if it just stops the copper from oxidising. I haven't got any of that, but I would have quite liked to have had some. The other thing that I've seen is that MG Chemicals make a product, I think they call it liquid tin, and I did want to tin the board. I wanted to basically tin plate it, which again would make it easier to solder, but it appears that you can't get that product here in the UK. I tried very hard, couldn't find it anywhere. I'm not even sure if it's still available in America. You can buy these liquid tin plating crystals, but I looked at some of the reviews on Amazon and stuff like that, and everybody gave it really bad reviews, so I don't think that stuff maybe works very well. Oh god, I'm getting quite high on that. So here's the toner transfer paper with my ident layer laid out onto it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that up. I'm not sure how well I'm going to align this. Hopefully I'll be at least in the ballpark, even if I don't get it dead right. Oops, I can see already I've just managed to rub off some of the toner with my finger. So I've got to make sure I put this the right way around now, and I think the right way around is I put a logo on this side of the board which should line up with a logo on that side of the board. So in theory, if I line these things up now, that should be it. I put some little crosses that were designed to line up with the drill holes. Again, I'm probably not going to get it dead on, but hopefully we're just going to get it close enough. So, fingers crossed, did we get an ident layer? Trying to give you a big reveal here. I'm not doing very well, am I? Oh, and to me, that looks pretty good. Is it the right way around, or have I got everything backwards? That looks pretty good. Will it wipe off? No. I think a few people put a lacquer on top of here. I don't think I'm going to bother to do that. As long as the ident layer just stays on long enough to assemble the board, I think that's going to be good enough. Now I have just noticed a bit of a Billy bodge there. I've noticed that we've got a letter R there. I think it's at R6. For some reason the ident has, well, it's obviously blown off that resistor in the wind and it's ended up on top of the IC there. I can't believe the number of times that I checked this circuit board and I thought I got rid of all the mistakes, and yeah, unfortunately I have made some mistakes. So let's have a look. Where are my links? Okay, so we're going to have to put a link wire in there where it says link 1, and we have to put another link wire there. So a couple of links that we could have done without, definitely we could have done without them links if we'd spent a bit more time on the board. And we've got a letter, well, an ident for this component here, R6, that's escaped. It's on top of the chip, it should be on top of the resistor. I'm actually fairly pleased with that. It's got my little logo thing there, all the gear, no idea. And I've got my ESD gun, revision 0, 14/03/2020. So I'm going to call that as a success.